Good day, everyone. Hi, Doc Laura. Hello, fellow educators. I am Joyren G. Caromayan, and I am connected with ESP Punta Valley Elementary School. I am teaching as a grade 1 teacher. And right now, I'm going to report about the realism in philosophy of education. Now, understanding philosophy is important for us educators, not only so that we can possess an individual philosophy, but gain more awareness to the philosophies of our students, of our colleagues, and with our school heads and administrators. And one of which that we will discuss this morning is realism. So, what is realism? Let's find out. Realism is the notion that the world exists in terms of matter, separate from the world of ideas and independent of it. Realism is any philosophical theory that emphasizes the existence of some kind of things or objects, in contrast to theories that dispense with the things in question in favor of words, ideas, or logical constructions. Now, I have here a question. If a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, does it make a sound? What do you think? Well, you probably heard that question asked before, or you may have thought about it a few minutes before coming to an answer in your mind, or you may have taken it as a silly question. But the fundamental question behind that question is simple. Is there a true reality which exists outside of human perception, or is reality only what we perceive? Realism is a philosophy started by the ancient Greek writer Aristotle. He stated that there is a true reality and things exist whether humans perceive them or not. Now, there are three branches of realism, and we will discuss first the classical realism. The ideas proposed by Aristotle can be classified as classical realism. So, Aristotle, a great Greek philosopher, was a child of a physician to the king of Macedon. Thus, science was in his background. Aristotle believed that the world could be understood at a fundamental level through the detailed observation and cataloging of phenomenon. That is knowledge, which is what the word science means, is fundamentally empirical. So when we say science, it is a systematized body of knowledge. Do you still remember? Now, classical realism suggests that matter is real and that it is separate from our perception. You may see it, just like my example a while ago, the tree. We may not see it. We may not hear it or we may not feel it, but it is nevertheless exist. Education cultivates the capacity to reason, which allows for proper choices. Aristotle asserted that ideas can exist without matter, but matter cannot exist without ideas. Aristotle proposed Aristotelian realism that ideas such as the idea of God or the idea of a tree can exist without matter, but matter cannot exist without form, just like what I said a while ago. In order to get to form, it was necessary to study material things. According to Aristotle, each thing had a purpose, and education's purpose was to develop the capacity for reasoning. So, as a result, Aristotle used syllogism. So, what is syllogism? It is a process of ordering statements about reality in a logical, systematic form. The systematic form would include a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. The problem with this thinking is that if one premise is false, the conclusion cannot be accurate. For example, a famous but a simplistic version of a syllogism goes as follows. All men are human. all humans are mortal. Therefore, all men are mortal. All men are human are or is the major premise. All humans are mortal is the minor premise, and the conclusion is therefore all men are mortal. So there we have it for classical realism. Now let's move on to religious realism. Religious realism in Christianity was founded by St. Thomas Aquinas, dated 1225 to 1275. Aquinas presumed that God is pure reasoning, that is, the truth of all things. He believed that the sole purpose of existence is to reunite the soul with God. St. Thomas Aquinas was a priest of the Roman Catholic Church and Dominican order in Italy. The philosophy of Aquinas has exerted enormous influence on subsequent Christian theology, especially the Roman Catholic Church, and extending to Western philosophy in general. Aquinas believed that for the knowledge of any truth whatsoever, man needs divine help, that the intellect may be moved by God to its act. Aquinas believed that truth is known through reason, the natural revelation and faith, the supernatural revelation. And the supernatural revelation has its origin, and it is the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And it is made available through the teaching of the prophets and summed up in the Holy Scripture. Thomas Aquinas tried to balance the philosophy of Aristotle with Christian ideas. He believed that truth was passed to humans by God through divine revelation, and that human had the ability to seek out truth. In view of education, Aquinas believed that the primary agency of education are the family and the church, and the state or the organized society runs upward. The family and the church have an obligation to teach those things that relate to the unchanging principle of moral and divine law. In fact, Aquinas mentioned that mother is the child's first teacher. And because the child is molded easily, it is the mother's role to set the child's moral tone. The church stands for the source of knowledge of the divine and should set the grounds for understanding God's law. The state should formulate and enforce law on education, but it should not abridge the educational primacy of the home and church. So there we have it for religious realism. Let's proceed to modern realism. Modern realism began to develop because classical realism did not adequately include a method of inductive thinking. When we say inductive thinking, it is something related to mathematical or logical thinking. Modern realists, therefore, believe that a process of deduction must be used to explain ideas. So, of all the philosophers engaged in this effort, the two most outstanding was Francis Bacon and John Locke. Uh, they were involved in developing systematic methods of thinking and ways to increase human understanding. So, Bacon attempted to change the structure of realism from deductive reasoning to an inductive approach. The inductive approach would reform realist thinking from a specific idea in the physical world to a more general assumption. Ignoring preconceived notions or preconceived reality, Bacon identified the origins of our preconceived notions, encouraging humanity to disregard this idea. Bacon, or Francis Bacon, dated 1561 to 1626, was an English philosopher, a statesman, scientist, lawyer, jurist, and author. The Novum Organum is a philosophical work by Francis Bacon published in 1620. Bacon felt that the problem with religious realism was that it began with dogma or belief then worked toward deducing conclusion. He felt that science could not work with this process because it was inappropriate and ineffective for the scientific process to begin with preconceived ideas. So he therefore devised the inductive method of acquiring knowledge, which begins with observation and then uses reasoning to make general statements or laws. Now let's proceed to John Locke. John Locke, dated 1632 to 1974, um, he is a he was an English philosopher rather. Locke is considered the first of the British empiricists. His ideas had innermost influence on the development of epistemology and political philosophy, and he is widely regarded as one of the most influential Enlightenment thinkers, classical Republican, and contributors to liberal theory. Some thoughts concerning education is a 1693 discourse on education written by John Locke. For over a century, it was the most important philosophical work on education in Britain. Locke conjectured that everything we know comes from experience, and from reflecting on that experience, we are not born with any innate or preconceived ideas, but rather we are a blank slate. So, in Locke's essay concerning human understanding, written in 1690, Locke outlined a new theory of mind, contending that the child's mind was a tabula rasa. So, when we say tabula rasa, first thing that comes in our mind is John Locke. So, tabula rasa or blank slate or empty mind, that is, it did not contain any innate or inborn ideas. Although Locke argued vigorously for the tabula rasa theory of mind, he nevertheless did believe in innate talents and interests. For example, he advises parents to watch their children carefully in order to discover their aptitudes and to nurture their children's own interests rather than force them to participate in activities which they like. John Locke believed that the mind was a blank slate at birth. Information and knowledge were added through experience, perception, and reflection. He felt that what we know is what we experience. Locke believed that play was very important in learning and stressed the importance of age appropriate readiness to receive certain concept of learning. He thought that teachers shouldn't push children beyond their natural inclinations and should make lesson interesting and rewarding. The focus of Locke's curriculum was on educating the total child. He felt that reading instruction should begin as soon as a child was talking. He believed also that education makes the man. He further explains how to educate that mind using three distinct methods: the development of a healthy body, the formation of a virtuous character, and the choice of an appropriate academic curricular. So, there we have it for John Locke under modern realism. Now, education or educational realism is the sorry. Educational realism is the belief that we should study logic, critical thinking, and the scientific method to teach students to perceive and understand reality. I'm sorry, I have to adjust my camera because it's blocking my monitor and I cannot read it. So, what does educational realism look like in a classroom? To figure that out, let's imagine a teacher. For example, let's name the teacher um, a teacher Henry, who is trying to plan his curriculum, or let's say not a teacher but an educator or an administrator and or a school head. He is trying to plan his curriculum for the upcoming school year. And Henry is a realist and believed that Aristotle was on the right path all those years. So Henry can plan a year of learning to help students perceive and understand reality. So the first thing that he will do uh, is to include lots of opportunities to study the natural world for the learners. Because a realist believes that the job of school is to teach students about the world around them. This means that Henry wants to teach Teacher Henry wants to teach his students how to use logical processes to find truth in the natural world. For example, in the setup of classroom, instead of teaching students about gravity from a textbook, a teacher might take his pupils outside and recreate Sir Isaac Newton's moment of clarity when he saw the apple fall. Henry or the teacher can climb a tree and drop an object of different masses to allow students to figure out how gravity and mass work together. But there is no apple tree here. So usually sa eskwelahan wala man na sa mga puno nga pwede magtaklas ang teacher. So for example, again is on top of the stage, the teacher there will stand and allow his pupils to look at him and evaluate. So using an any object, is kaning the apple. So pwede niya na gamiton, no? Now, uh, the teacher will be able to teach outside the textbook. And another example in military schools. So military schools tend to promote a realist approach. How? By developing the character of each soldier or student, they promote honor and dignity. They promote nationalism, the one truth that is common to each participant. Military schools are orderly and systematic and depend on the process to develop excellence in each man or woman. And last example is my own experience inside the classroom. By giving real objects to the learner when we are having our lesson, in addition, I am able to promote a realist approach. Now, instead of putting picture of marbles, because I'm using that as an example for as a counters, in addition, instead of putting a picture, just a picture, and being added to another set of marbles, I allow them to hold a real object, a real marble. Then I will add another one, and they will count for themselves the sum of marbles they are holding. So with that, I am being a realist. In conclusion, realism has probably had the greatest impact on educational philosophy because it is the fundamental or the foundation of science and reasoning. Realist educators encourage students to draw their observation and conclusion from the world around them rather than confining themselves to an analysis of their own ideas. The modern role of a teacher, I'm sorry, excuse me, that of an organizer, a promoter, as a facilitator of critical thinking, is largely founded on a realist principle. Realist educators are objective, believing in a systematic approach to order and classified knowledge, building on previously learned information. They are less likely to encourage their students to seek the truth in literature and ideas. Instead, encouraging them to seek the truth by testing learned principles on the world around them. So, thank you for watching. This will be the end of my report. I hope you did learn something from me. And this is my references so that you can check for yourselves and read it for your future use. Thank you very much. And God bless everyone.